Welcome to the Crowd Score Podcast. Kevin Stewart, Reggie Walker alongside you again this week. Reggie, it's a little hot outside today. How you feeling there, buddy?
Bro, it's warm, but the good thing about that is summertime's here. And if anybody has seen my Instagram lately, the cookouts have already begun. And they will continue throughout the summer. So here we go. Let's get it in, right? By the way, my Instagram is r_walk13. Just throwing that out there. If y'all want to get them likes in and get your stomach full by looking at food.
It's a good follow. I'll be honest. So it's almost July. Speaking of that steamy heat, it's almost July. Panthers minicamp just wrapped up. Yep. We are about a little over a month out from training camp. And Reg, as you've played in a big-time college football program at Penn State, obviously Beaver Stadium right behind you on your background. But as the calendar turns, and as we get to July, what's the mindset of a player? Like how are you trying to approach off-season workouts, off-season training, maybe a diet? What's the mindset of a player as we reach the peak summer months?
The big thing is you're trying to press your body, right? Physically, at least once a day or that kind of thing to make sure you're still in shape, but you're also in like sort of maintenance mode and trying to make sure you don't have any nicks or any kind of pain going into training camp. So right now, guys are doing a lot of things like trying to relax when they can. I'm sure some guys are probably even getting a vacation in. The interesting thing about the vacations, and I've seen this happen in person. I was on a cruise years ago around this time of year, and just so happened Greg Jennings was on the same cruise with me, former wide receiver in the NFL, and I saw him in the gym on the boat, and he was doing some cardio stuff, and he's like, I'm on vacation, so I'm kind of shutting it down, but I still got to ramp my body up every now and then, every day, just to make sure that I feel okay and that I'm not losing any sort of conditioning. So a lot of it's body maintenance and patience with their body to make sure that they're ready to go come training camp, but at the same time, making sure that they're getting the proper rest. So a lot of guys, they maybe for another week or two, they may still be, depending on what their workout regimen is. You've heard of some of the legendary workout guys that have had, they work out 2 or 3 times a day. You'll see them start to taper that off. This time of year, they'll probably just work out one time or at least lower the intensity a little bit to make sure they're still getting a good workout, but start now to rest their body instead of ramping it up so much because they know they'll get it. It'll kind of start to get nicked up and beat up in training camp.
Yeah, I've always kind of wondered that, like what's the give and take? Because you need the rest, but you also got to be ready to hit the ground running once week 1 starts, in a few months. But, you got to be still fine-tuned to be ready for training camp, correct?
Yeah, you do. And some guys, I know, at times when guys are away from the team, they'll organize something with some teammates, once or twice a week, just to make sure not only they, but some other guys are kind of really getting that good body push to get ready for the season every now and then as well. But they'll know that they're not going to sort of overexert themselves. And the big thing right now for a lot of guys, Kev, is, anything soft tissue. That is the last thing you want to deal with right now. So a lot of proper stretching. A lot of guys are probably doing yoga, anything they can do to sort of make sure they're limber. They're definitely doing that now as well, because what you don't want is, you're working out right in the middle of July and now all of a sudden that hamstring gets pulled or that hamstring is tight, because those are the type of injuries, man, those soft tissue injuries, they can linger for an entire season if you don't rest them properly and get them rehabbed the right way. So guys are making sure to maintain and stay away from those kinds of things as well, so that they can make sure that their bodies are ready to go. Because when training camp starts, guys want to be pretty close to tip top. They're not as worried about being in the best shape of their life, whatever. They're going to use the rest of training camp to get there, but they want to be pretty close to tip top shape and be ready to go so that their body can deal with the rigors of all the physical, the collisions. Essentially, football is not a contact sport, man. It's a collision sport. And they need to start getting ready for those collisions. But the last thing you want to do is have that stuff going on right now and start to beat your body up and get things sore. So they're staying away from that, but certainly getting their bodies ramped up for training camp.
It is a collision sport. And I remember my mother didn't let me play when I was a child. And when I got to high school, it was your decision. You want to go play? Go play. And I said, all right, I'm going to go play. And we ran Oklahoma's, and I said, "What the hell is this? It is a collision sport." And that's when I said, "Okay, I'm out." But anyway, you said, mentioned the injuries, the soft tissue injuries, but that reminds me of last year because these guys didn't really have the freedom to go anywhere and work out last year with COVID, and there was just a ton of injuries in the first month or two of the season. Like it felt like it was a little more than normal. No.
Yeah, it did. And I think it sometimes it's amplified when you don't have training camp, when you don't have the all-season program, because that can be part of it, right? Guys that are and it's a twofold thing. And I think teams and players and everybody kind of loses sight of this, but there is a such thing as guys kind of overworking themselves in the offseason with their own trainers and that type of thing. And this year, or this past season, I should say, there's a myriad of things that I think could have attributed to that. I think some guys could have gone too hard in the offseason, not necessarily knowing, what to expect and feeling like, I don't have anything else to do. So I'm just going to make sure I'm in great shape, and maybe they overdid it. Some guys may have been hoping that the season got canceled, so they didn't get themselves in great shape. And then they fell apart when it was time to actually start going through the rigors of the season. And then some of it was just your standard injuries as well. So I think there's a group of things that led to the injury count this year. But I think one of the two of the things that we can certainly look at is maybe guys underdoing it because they were thinking they wouldn't have a season, and some guys probably overdoing it just because they wanted to make sure that, if there was a stop and start type situation, or if all of a sudden, they went through something like, oh, we're going to shut it down, and then all of a sudden they're going to ramp it back up. They didn't know what to expect. So I think some guys probably were overdoing it as well.
I think the only guy that couldn't ever overdo it was Jerry Rice, working out on that hill that he used to run on every day for his whole life. I mean, that guy was out of his mind.
I've seen some legendary workouts. Some guys have done some wild things, man.
So Christian McCaffrey, believe it or not, is entering his 5th year with the Carolina Panthers in the NFL. It's very hard to imagine. But now he finally has a backup, like a certified backup. It's not to take anything away from Reggie Bonifant or whoever else he's played with.
Mike Davis,
who was, he was fantastic last year when he filled in for when McCaffrey went down. But, they have Chuba Hubbard. They drafted him from OK State this year. And you've kind of been in that position at Penn State where you've had someone mentor you, and then you've had to mentor, the younger guys coming in. So what are the benefits of that relationship, and how can McCaffrey teach him how to approach his first season in the NFL?
Well, I think let me say this first, right on that point, because I think it's a very interesting relationship. And I think this is also a chance for Chuba Hubbard to, learn from Christian McCaffrey and understand how to do it. And I'll explain that in a second, so that Christian McCaffrey trusts Chuba Hubbard enough to allow himself, meaning Christian, to come off the field at times,
right,
and let Chuba Hubbard get some snaps, get some carries to take some of that wear and tear off for Christian himself. So I think that's one of the pieces of it that's real important, obviously, for Chuba Hubbard on his end, looking up to McCaffrey. And I think as you're mentoring down, if you will, as a guy like McCaffrey, you want to help a guy learn how to be a pro, learn how to go through the process, right? What it means to study film. And one of the things, Kevin, I want to say this is, I think is a misnomer, is the proverbial first guy in, last guy out with the film. That's garbage. What you better be is the guy that gets in, gets the information in his head so that he can play well. And then it doesn't matter how long you're there. And I think Christian and any guys that are mentors can really help those younger guys understand how that process works, understand how to study, understand some of the nuances of the system, teach them how to be a pro, teach them, just, the approach to meetings, when, hey, write that down, or, when is there some kind of a site adjustment, different things that McCaffrey sees in a game from the other guy, right? So when McCaffrey's, let's just say he and Chuba Hubbard are watching film together, and McCaffrey says, hey, so I see this linebacker doing this because he knows I like to get outside. Well, you got to be aware of that because you're a speed guy as well, and you can get to the edge. So just look up and understand if you see that guy shading out there, or you see that linebacker inverted a different way with that defensive end, if they're over there playing a game, you need to be aware of that. Also, pass protections. A lot of different pass protections are very nuanced, man. And one of the things I learned in college was, because in high school, it was one of those things, and it's so funny, and it changes in the NFL as well. But one of the things that I remember is you would always hear, right, when you're a younger player, take the inside most guy on a pass rush, on pass protection, if you're back in to help, and then we'll deal with the guy on the edge. Well, sometimes you get to college and they'll tell you, hey, that guy coming up the middle, that's the quarterback's responsibility. You need to get this linebacker coming from over here. That's your read. The side adjustment is for the quarterback if that guy's coming up the middle, whatever those things are. So just talking him through what those pass protections are so that they can trust him to be on the field and not get their quarterback hurt. And then how to maintain and take care of your body. Additional tips, right? Christian McCaffrey's had his injuries, but from what we know, obviously his body in general has been pretty strong, right? He hasn't.
It looks like a pretty elite body.
Right. And I've been around. I'm gonna tell you something. I did a camp. I was working a camp a couple of summers ago here in Charlotte, and it was Luke's camp. I believe it was Luke's camp, and Christian showed up, or it was vice versa, or it was Christian's camp and Luke showed up. One of the two. Okay. But let me tell you something. They were obviously different from a size standpoint. Luke being, a linebacker size, that middle linebacker, and Christian being a running back. So Christian was a little bit smaller from a overall weight standpoint. If you looked at those guys, though, by the arms and by the upper body, they were very similar. Yeah. So Christian McCaffrey takes care of his body. I think he'll definitely teach Chuba Hubbard some of those things as well, nutrition, all those kinds of things, how to operate within the facility in terms of eating, who to go to, what kind of treatments they can get for different things. So all of those things will be important. But I think the biggest thing is learning how to be a pro and learning how to study. And then if you're, so that's what you're looking for. If you're the young guy, you want to learn those things. And then when it's your turn, you want to take those things that you've learned and add a little bit of a twist. I'll give you a couple of examples from when I was at Penn State. When I first got there, obviously my defensive backs were looking out for me, guys like Bruce Branch and Brian Scott, who played for the Bills and Falcons, amongst other teams in the NFL. But those guys were really trying to help me learn the position. And one of the guys that taught me, really was helping me navigate campus was Mike Haynes. And I remember, it was a Friday night, after my freshman season, where we're going into winter conditioning, or it was winter conditioning or something. And I was just going to kind of stay home on a Friday because I wasn't really sure kind of where to go, what was smart or not smart. And I get a call from Mike Haynes, and he picked me up. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna come get you. We're gonna go hang out over here." And I get to where we're going, and it's a very laid back environment. There's only about 10, 12, 15 people there. And it's just kind of sitting around listening to music, having a good, comfortable conversation, like some adults. And he's like, "This is where you want to be. You don't want to be in the bars every night because that's where people are going to see you and you got issues." In a situation like this, everybody kind of knows who we are and what we're doing and what we're not supposed to be doing. And so you don't have to worry about so many eyeballs. So he kind of taught me that. And then later in my college career, moved over to the running back position, and guys like Larry Johnson and some of those guys would just kind of grab me and say, "Hey, let's go watch a little bit of film. Hey, remember this, think about these kinds of things." So just really having guys to help you navigate and be, whether you're the youngest guy coming in, or then you become that guy that has to help other young guys navigate, is very important. I remember Tamba Hali coming to me a lot when he was a freshman and just being like, "Hey man, I'm trying to figure this out on campus. I'm trying to figure out where I can get this resource, whether it's academically or what have you." And just having someone that you can trust, right? And that they can trust to ask those types of questions. I remember there was a freshman, I won't name him here, but he was having some academic issues, and he was struggling real bad with a class, but he was kind of embarrassed to ask for help. And so he came to me and he was like, I'm kind of trying to figure this out, but like, I don't want to tell them I need a tutor. Like, I'm not, like, my grades are good. And I'm like, "Look, man, it's a resource that's here." Right. And it's something that you're going to get more respect from the head man and the bosses for addressing your issue before it becomes a problem. And so I was able to help him sort of navigate that process to understand where to go, to ask for the assistance, and then to make sure he got it, and then followed up with him, over time to make sure he was still comfortable and understood it. And so that kind of stuff was important. And then kind of one of the things I would do with a lot of freshmen is I would ask them a lot, like, what's their plan after football? What do you want to do if you're not doing this for the next 30 years of your life, whether it's playing or coaching? What do you want to do? What's your plan to get there? Because if you don't kind of get those thoughts going in young guys' heads early, they can lose themselves. So if you're thinking about Christian McCaffrey, one of the things he's talking to Chuba Hubbard about is how to take care of his body, how to think long-term, how to take care of his money, right? Where do you invest? Do you put it in the bank? All these different things, how to manage that money. And they're probably not going to talk specifics, but it'll be a situation where maybe it comes up, hey man, do you have an investment guy, or do you think it's worth it for me to have an investment guy? Those kinds of conversations I think are very, very important. And I think people lose sight of that. A lot of people think these guys turn pro and they just have a bunch of money and they just have all these resources that are just waiting for them. Well, in a lot of ways that's true, but in a lot of ways, some of those people are vultures. And one of I want to shout out, I watch, I like a lot of podcasts, obviously, and we're doing one here, so I'm going to support others. But I do check out I Am Athlete all the time. And
great show.
One of the great lines from Channing Crowder, he was talking about, going to see his money guy, his investment guy. And he said he went by himself for the longest time. And then eventually he started taking his wife. And he said all of a sudden his wife asked the investment guy, well, look, you keep telling us where to put our money and who to invest in. Where's your money at? Who are you investing in?
Okay, that's good. Yeah, good question.
And he said in the moment, he looked at his wife and went, well, damn, I need to be bringing her to more meetings because that's a great question. If this guy is telling me where to put my money, I want to know where his is. So it's things like that, and again, I use that as an example, and that's a husband and wife kind of situation. But I guarantee you those types of conversations are things that happen more often than we realize in an NFL locker room or an NBA locker room or any locker room, of just how to manage and navigate those types of things. So I think those things are really, really important. And I'm pretty sure that Christian will talk to Chuba Hubbard about those kinds of things and more.
You bring up a lot of good points, because for a lot of us, we turn on the game, top of the first, at the bottom of the ninth, or first quarter, the fourth quarter, and then we don't think about it until the next game. So it's a lot of things that you just brought up that a lot of people probably don't think about, and it's not a one-way like tutorship, so to speak. Like Christian's not just teaching Chuba. Chuba's going to teach him some things too that he probably hasn't read or hasn't learned. Because I read a Darren Gant article just before we went on here, and McCaffrey was quoted on saying that he saw a move in minicamp this past week. It wasn't from Hubbard, but it was from somebody else. And he says, I hadn't seen that. I'm going to put it in my arsenal. So it's not just a one-way street here.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think any player that would tell you they can't learn from another player, they're not going to stick around very long in any sport.
I think that goes for all aspects in life too.
That goes for all aspects. One of the things, and I'm going to give the world a little bit of advice here.
The world? Do you think we had that big of an audience?
Well, because you're involved in it. But I'll just say it like this. Don't be afraid to get in a conversation. You just might learn something.
I 100% agree.
I mean, there is never a shortage of knowledge out there. And here's the thing. You can learn good things and you can learn bad things. You can learn what to do and what not to do. And that's okay too. And so I think that's part of, what guys will do. And trust me, I had some teammates in college that I was able to watch somewhat from afar, some at times closely, that I learned what not to do from those guys. And that's part of it as well. And so you have this, this collection of things to kind of look around and take in. And I think any smart player would take everything in that they possibly can.
The Atlanta Hawks are in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Love it.
The Atlanta Hawks are in the Eastern Conference Finals. Hard to imagine.
I love it.
It's great. It's refreshing. Like we had the Suns and the Clippers and the Bucks and the Hawks. It's refreshing. Like there were so many years where I didn't tune into the NBA because you knew it was going to be the Golden State and Cleveland in the finals. And as a Knicks fan, they stunk. So why am I watching this product? But they're in these conference finals. They beat the Knicks in 5. They just beat the Sixers in 7. They've overcome teams that have size, something that the Hornets don't have. And we hope they address that this offseason. We think they're going to address that this offseason. But how big of a problem is this Hawks team going to be for the Hornets going forward, knowing that, they'll probably get better next year. And they might be a little bit more of a free agent destination than years past. But how big of a problem is this team going forward for the Hornets?
I think it's a big problem, and here's why, right? Because you already mentioned the lack of sort of rim protection for the Hornets. But what makes that scary is then when teams start attacking downhill, right, getting near the rim, as we've seen Trae Young do plenty. If you start to collapse your defense, there's shooters everywhere. Collins can hit the 3. He's not their best, but he can hit the 3. Gallinari can knock down 3s. Bogdanovich can knock down 3s.
Kevin Huerter
is one of the better shooters, I think, in this league. And so you start looking around at this basketball team, and it scares you because they've got a lot of guys that can hit shots. And then, oh, by the way, Lemon Pepper Lou is still sitting over there on that bench. And you got to love Lemon Pepper Lou. And I'm always going to call him Lemon Pepper Lou.
I've never heard that.
As much as I can call him Lemon Pepper Lou because I love the nickname Lemon Pepper Lou. And yes, I said Lemon Pepper Lou 6 times now. But it's all about Lemon Pepper Lou. But being able to knock down shots from the perimeter and have guys that can turn the corner, I think is major. And the other thing I like about what Atlanta has, whether it's Gallinari or Bogdanovich or even John Collins at times, and even Huerter has shown that he's willing to do it. Those guys, if you close out too fast, they will pump you from the 3-point line, take one dribble in and hit a 17-footer as well. So they're willing to take the mid-range shot as well as the 3, as well as get downhill and attack the rim. And then when Clint Capella is playing at his best, he'll clean up all the trash around the rim as well. So I think if you look at it that way, yes, they can give this Hornets team problems for a long time because, listen, I don't care who's playing point guard for the Hornets, and this is no disrespect. It's hard to keep Trae Young out of the lane for 48 minutes. It's just a difficult thing to do. And when he's able to do that and your defense is forced to collapse, it causes a lot of problems. So I think the big thing the Hornets would want to do, obviously, is get some rim protection and get some rim protection that understands when to try to erase, right, that floater and when to step back and make Trae Young shoot that floater. But then you also have to have really good wing defenders. And I'm talking to guys like Gordon Hayward, right, that are willing to help and step in there to slow down those drives and not let Trae Young turn that corner. And I think James Borrego, he's got all the defensive concepts in his arsenal. It's just a matter of deploying them and changing it up on Trae Young consistently to force him to kind of think instead of play instinctively. But all in all, what makes Atlanta to me so dangerous is Trae Young's ability to get in the lane because he's surrounded by guys that can shoot essentially positions 2 through 4. They can knock down the 3, and then every now and then they go small and they can put Gallinari in there at the 5 spot, and they can really stretch you because then 2 through 5 can knock down the 3. And that's not even counting the fact that Trae Young can step it up and shoot it from the logo if he wants to.
I didn't watch the Hawks enough this season. I watched the 3 games they played against the Hornets, and the Hornets were 2-1 against them. But this team has really earned the respect across the league that they deserve. And Trae Young, for me, like, he was always a guy that, I felt like he was just a shooter and a scorer. But he can do everything. And all of a sudden, like that draft night trade of Luka Doncic for Trae Young, it looks a lot more even now than it did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and the thing that bothers me about some of those trades, and everybody gets all bent out of shape. Oh, this team won, this team lost. He's not doing. It was all potential anyway.
Right.
And so you got to give him a chance to grow into the potential.
He's grown into
Trae
it.
Young has grown into it very smoothly, I might add. And I think the other piece of it is confidence. I think getting to the playoffs, and listen, I think another big key, whether he was the greatest player in the NBA or not at the time, Nate McMillan, as a former point guard in the NBA, working with Trae Young, that is a point guard, on a daily basis as the head coach, I think it's really helped Trae Young. I think it's helped his confidence. I think it's helped his decision-making. And I think at the end of the day, that trust between not only his teammates, but the coaching staff and Nate McMillan specifically, I think has allowed Trae Young to play very, very free. And I think that's why we're seeing him play so well.
And to go back to the size point that I brought up earlier, they blew through the Knicks, who had Taj Gibson and Nerlens Noel underneath, who played defense very well all season. Now they just went through Joel Embiid. Now they're going to have Giannis, who, you know, I don't know. Well, I don't know why Budenholzer puts him at the point at the top of the key when Brooklyn had nobody to guard him underneath. But if they get through Giannis now, it's all of a sudden it's like this Hawks team is very for real and very scary going forward.
Well, I think what they're going to do defensively is load up and not let Giannis get going downhill. Obviously, that's the best way to slow him down, force him to be a jump shooter. But I think the better thing for him to eliminate him a little bit on the defensive end and that length and his ability and willingness at times to come and block shots and help. If he's got to guard Gallinari, you can't help off Gallinari. If he's got to guard John Collins, Collins can shoot it well enough from out there. Mm-hmm. He can't help off of John Collins. So I think the matchup of who they have him guard is going to be very, very important. And then the other piece of it for Clint Capella, he's just going to have to try to find a way to out-athlete, right, Lopez inside. Uh-huh. Otherwise, I think they're okay. And I think they've got a decent matchup. Are they going to have some issues in terms of the athleticism on the perimeter? Yes, Drew Holiday is a bigger point guard, obviously, than Trae Young. He could post Trae Young at times if he needs to. Chris Middleton is more athletic than Herter or Bogdanovich, so they're going to have to adjust to him a little bit as well. But to your point, when you look at what Milwaukee can do, the key is going to be the fact that they have the shooting. It can eliminate some of that help side defense and force Milwaukee is going to have to be better individual defenders on the perimeter. Now, I think Drew Holiday is much better than they've had in the past, whether it's been Eric Bledsoe or other guys, with the exception of maybe Malcolm Brogdon, in terms of pure defensively. I'm not saying that Drew Holiday is not as good a player as Brogdon, but Brogdon may have been a better pure defender on the ball than Drew Holiday, and if so, not by much. But I think Drew Holiday gives them something defensively to deal with Trae Young, and he's quick enough, and he's long enough, and he's big enough to give Trae some problems defensively. But then on the flip side, Trae Young's going to have to guard him. And I think at times, if they get Trae Young down in the post, you get that mouse in the house, they're going to have some issues because if Trae Young's down there in the post, where do you help? And if you end up helping off of Giannis, who's now diving to the basket to catch and finish from Drew Holiday, you got a bigger problem. So I think if Budenholzer is smart enough to do some inverting there with those two guys and allow Giannis to be the cutter, then I think Atlanta's going to have some problems trying to figure out how to keep Milwaukee from scoring the basketball.
You know, every time you mention Clint Capella, all I see in my head is Miles Bridges putting him 6 feet under.
Yes. You know, it's funny. I'm glad you brought up Miles Bridges, and it's really not. It doesn't have anything to do with Miles Bridges. But I fired off a tweet the other day about McCall Bridges, and I've been big on McCall Bridges since he was back at Villanova, and he's down with the Phoenix Suns now. He made some big plays down the stretch of Game 1 to help them win that game. Had a big block on I believe a Paul George drive late. Hit a big three, caught an alley-oop, made a few plays down the stretch. And I tweeted something about that, and someone wrote back to me, yeah, but he's not quite as good as his brother, Miles Bridges. And I just didn't have the heart to tell the guy they ain't brothers. So I just left it alone. But I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to address that. I didn't want to break my man's heart, but my man, they're not brothers.
I mean, it's Twitter. There's a lot of things said that are just not factual, so to speak.
That's exactly right.
All right, Reg, I think that's going to do it for us this week, Reg. Hopefully we get our guest next week. We were supposed to have one today, but he couldn't make it, so hopefully we'll have him next week, and hopefully get you over here next weekend for a nice little cookout, a couple beers, and just kind of enjoy the Carolina weather.
Yeah, I'm down for that. It's going to be a big weekend for me. Charlotte Thunder playing for a championship on Saturday, 6:30 at the Bojangles Coliseum. All the marbles on the line, championship on the line. For anybody here in Charlotte or elsewhere that wants to watch a little bit of football, get your tickets now, man. Check it out. It's a good time. I think tickets are $25. So it's not bad to see a little indoor football.
Yeah.
50-yard field, a lot of points usually scored. Well, usually by Charlotte, not often as much by the other team, because this defense is one of the better defenses I've ever seen, to be honest, at arena football, because they just it's amazing how many opponents they've held to under double digits, to be honest with you. So a really good football team.
It's hard to do in arena football.
Fun atmosphere, yeah, fun atmosphere. Great coaching staff. Irvin Bryson and his staff do an excellent job. I'll be calling the game alongside Mike Solarte.
Friend of the show?
Yep, friend of the show. And look, again, I'll say it again. If you haven't gotten your tickets, charlottethunder.com, or go to the Bojangles Coliseum box office and pick them up. I think you'll have a good time at the game.
All right, brother. I'll see you next week.
Yes, sir. Be good, man. Appreciate you.
See y'all.